In episode 16, we spoke with Robert Wagner about lucid dreaming. In episodes 1, 3, and 14, we spoke with John Kruth about some of the studies and events going on at the Rhine Research Center. Tonight, I'm going to introduce you to Mark Turner, a friend whose experiences have run the gamut from lucid dreaming to UFO sightings to leading the remote viewing group at the Rhine. Welcome to the Peep Podcast. I'm your host, Nicolle, and on this episode, I'm introducing you to Mark Turner. But first, I want to say thank you to everyone who is sharing the Peep Podcast with others who might be interested in listening. Your testimonials to friends and family are the best way to grow my audience. I appreciate your spreading the word. Now let's get back to tonight's topic. Mark Turner is a psychic, remote viewer, and an enthusiastic explorer of all kinds of odd phenomena. He serves on the board of the Rhine Research Center and works by day in the technology field. I first reached out to Mark to invite him on the show for a conversation about remote viewing, and he was generous enough with his time to share some personal experiences with the paranormal, and I'm so grateful he did. Let's dive in with Mark. Hi, Mark. How are you doing tonight?
Doing well, Nikki. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Thank you so much for joining me. And I am so excited to talk about controlled remote viewing with you. But we're also going to talk about whatever else comes along. So I want to get started by asking you, just in general, how did you first get interested in, say, the paranormal?
Well, I was a teenager in high school and kind of a geek. That's the real shocker for you, I know. But I was keeping a dream journal at the time, and I started to write down as much detail as I could about the dreams I was having. And I started to notice that these things would actually take place during the day. I would see things in my dreams that would take place, the same scenarios, the same people involved. And that kind of set me back for a bit. I'm like, whoa, how is this possible that I can see things in the future in my dreams? But it definitely caught my attention. And I started to pay closer attention to those little coincidences that seem to happen during the day. And in fact, I think I remember being back in high school and sitting in the cafeteria one day and just having this overwhelming knowing that a volcano was about to erupt. And sure enough, the next day, I think there was a huge volcano that erupted in Colombia. And I think wound up causing some mudslides and killing some people or something too. But that was really weird for me to just be sitting there and just know that something was going to happen. So that got my attention, and ever since then, every time I had a little intuitive nudge in a particular direction, I started to pay very close attention to it.
Wow, that's intuitive, precognitive dreams are just a fascinating topic. Have you tried studying that farther than writing them down? Like, have you really dug into that?
Oh yeah. I was actually thinking about this before I came on the show. If I had any advice to anybody out there, I would say, if you want to become more psychic, pay attention to your dreams. I think that's probably the easiest way to unlock these abilities, because your dreaming mind, your subconscious, knows this information. And I think the more accustomed you get to listening to those little hints that you get inside your head, the stronger those signals will come in the future. So there's a lot that can be done in dreams, and an especially useful skill is learning how to dream lucidly. Lucid dreaming. I think you've had some people on your show talking about lucid dreaming before. I've had some very powerful psychic lucid dreams in the past that definitely got my attention, and I'd be happy to talk about those too. But I think that that's the one thing that just anybody, if you just sit down, you pay attention to your dreams, if you keep a dream journal, you might actually start noticing the same way I did, that things that you had already dreamt about wind up taking place at some point. So
Please tell me about your lucid dreams.
okay. Yes. Well, I'd read about lucid dreams, all my life, I guess. And then a book by Dr. Stephen LeBerg came out called, was it Lucid? What was it? I forget the name of his actual book. Exploring the World of Lucid Dreaming is what it is. Dr. Stephen LeBerg. And he did a lot of research in the lab of people. He was one of the first scientists to actually conclusively determine that somebody was dreaming. Like the person in their lucid dream state was able to send a predetermined signal with eye movements in response to what Dr. LeBerge was saying. So he could actually verify that this person was dreaming lucidly. Anyway, fascinating book. And it had a bunch of practical exercises that anybody could use. It's basically, it all boils down to testing your reality day and night. Ask yourself, am I dreaming right now? And get into a habit of that. If you've got a nice digital watch or something, you can set the hourly chime on it. Every time the chime goes off, you could just stop and say, okay, am I dreaming or not? Is this a dream? You can actually look at the numbers on a digital watch or a clock. And often in a dream state, if you look away and then you look back again, those numbers will change. And that's a big clue that, hey, you're dreaming, and then you can become lucid. So what does it really mean to become lucid? I don't know if everyone's familiar with this, but it is basically when you, in my opinion, and I think this tracks well with what the experts say, but you wind up pulling your daytime consciousness into the dream state. And suddenly it is like a canvas where you know that you are the artist and you can change anything you want about the dream. You can go anywhere, you can fly, you can meet your heroes, whatever it is. And it is 100% realistic. Everything that you see around you is real. It's not just like watching a movie, like a lot of dreams are, where you're sort of being a passive observer, but in a lucid dream, you are actually there. And I think it's one of the coolest things I've ever learned how to do. And here's the thing. I did this for a while. It was mainly in the mid 2000s. I was really on a roll with lucid dreaming. And what I'd like to do, the habit I was in at the time was to keep a short list by my bed of things that I wanted to do if I became lucid. It doesn't happen all the time. You got to really practice this. And I was kind of getting a little lazy, I guess. But I had I had a list of things I wanted to do. And one night I woke up in my dream and I'm like, oh gosh, I don't have any idea what I want to do now. So I said, okay, why don't I get the winning lottery numbers that are going to come up? Just off the top of my head, it's like, okay, let's just see if this works. And I heard this voice in my head, okay. And all 6 or 8 numbers came out, 7, 4, 12, 28, something or whatever. And I made a really strong effort to remember this. It's like, okay, all right. I repeated them in my head. I was like, I got to get these numbers out of my dream and onto a piece of paper, right? So I did that as best I could. Woke up, wrote down those numbers. The very next day, I went out and I bought a ticket, and I didn't win. Numbers were completely different. So I'm like, what is this? This is all bogus. My dream lied to me, right? So I was like, okay, well, we'll see what happens. And I put the card away or whatever, went on about my life. And maybe 2 weeks later, I'm sitting scrolling through one of the local news websites during a lunch break, and I see that somebody has won the lottery. And it was in North Carolina, and I think it was like $74 million. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of interesting. And I scrolled down, and like 5 out of 6 of the numbers were the ones that were in my dream. I missed it by like one number.
Wow.
And I was thinking afterwards, like maybe it's because I just didn't remember it properly, that I'd written down the wrong number, which is quite possible. Numbers in dreams are really difficult to keep straight. It's a funny thing, but I went back later and I thought, okay, well, how could I have done this differently? Right. I realized this, it's all about tasking. And it's the same thing when you're doing remote viewing. It's all about tasking. I tasked my mind to say, okay, what are the winning lottery numbers? I didn't task my mind to say, tell me what numbers are going to be drawn in Wednesday's drawing so I can go buy a
Right.
ticket. Right. So I
Right.
did actually get the winning lottery numbers, but it wasn't me who won. So, my subconscious came through. It's just, I didn't quite tell it exactly what I needed. So, I still have that lottery ticket as a souvenir, and I think I looked on the lottery website, and the odds of getting those numbers was like 1 in 14,000. So it
That's
was significant, a significant result statistically. So
yeah, that's impressive.
yeah,
And I've learned the same thing, not through lucid dreaming, but just be specific what you ask for and be
right.
careful what you ask for.
You're right. Be careful because often sometimes you don't think things through, and things are a little bit different. So and even if you don't like do lottery numbers and stuff, being able to do whatever you want in a lucid dream is one of the coolest things. So I had one. I think the most recent lucid dream I had was like 2 weeks ago, and I don't quite remember the whole context, but I was at a table or a bar or something, and I remember taking my hand and shoving it down into the table, and the table, it was like pushing your hand through Jello or Play-Doh or something. It was kind of soft, and I looked at that. I was like, okay, this has got to be a dream because I don't normally put my hands through a solid surface like that, right? And then I kind of realized, boom, here I am. I'm awake. So
Yeah.
it is fun, and like I said, it's all about testing your reality. If you can get into that habit during the daytime, you will carry that over into your dreaming. And if you look for little things like that don't quite seem right in the dream, that's when you wake up in the dream, and then you can have all kinds of fun.
That is that's that's really good advice because I have not tried testing my reality during the day. I did have Robert Wagner on
Mm-hmm.
last year, I think, to talk about lucid dreaming, and he had a different way to approach trying to make yourself lucid dream. And I took his advice, and night after night, I was thinking, okay, if I am explaining myself to somebody in a dream, then I know it's lucid dream because I do that a lot. Like I feel I'm a storyteller. So even in my dreams, I'm giving somebody backstory. And while I'm giving it to them, part of my head is going, this has never happened. Why am I saying this? So I
Okay.
finally had
Right.
one moment where I did, I realized that was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did what he said to do, which was basically take your finger and extend it like way
Ooh.
longer than your finger should be. And then you
Mm-hmm.
know you're lucid dreaming. And I did that. And I showed the person I was talking to, and I said, look at my finger, I'm lucid dreaming. And then I went back to just having a regular dream. Like that was that was it. I woke
Oh,
up
so,
and I was
so
like, I
that was
was
it.
there. And that's
Oh,
as far as I got.
oh, yeah. Well, I was probably in my mid-20s before I had my first lucid dream, and I remember it vividly. I was just lying down. I think it was like an afternoon nap on the weekend, and I'm all of a sudden I realize I'm on a ship, and I was in the Navy, right? I served in the Navy, and I know now when I have a dream that I'm in the Navy that, okay, wait a second, I got out a long time ago. This has got to be a dream. So all of a sudden I'm back in my uniform. I'm standing on the inside deck of a ship. I can see my boots on the floor there, the deck, and I can hear them and feel them. And I'm like, this is like the coolest thing. All of a sudden, I am just somewhere else. And you not only are aware of yourself in the dream, but you're also aware of yourself sleeping. So this is a very interesting experience when you're in two places at once. You can feel yourself in two places at once, and that is really an amazing thing. I could tell I was breathing, snoring a little bit, but at the same time, here I'm on the ship, and you split your consciousness. It is so cool.
That's awesome. I'm gonna have
So
to try again.
yeah, and there are dream symbols too. Like if like a lot of times when I about to dream lucidly, I'll see tornadoes. That's what, like a signpost that says, hey, I'm dreaming.
Oh
um,
wow.
so look for those little things, those little things that pop up in your dreams all the time. For me, like I said, tornadoes, water spouts, or something like that. If I see that, or sometimes train engines too, for some reason, I dream a lot about trains. And make a list of those things and then start to notice them when they happen. And if you do that often enough, you'll become lucid. So better than any drugs or anything else I can imagine. It's an e-ticket. So yeah.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
So, other paranormal experiences. And
Well, yeah, lots of things. I well, like when I first met you, for instance, I had just moved into my house here in Raleigh and had my kids were still little, right? It was probably the fall or early winter when I got up early and took the dog for a walk. Uh, Nobody else was awake in the house. This is probably even before the kids were in elementary school, but I had gone maybe 50 feet down the road and I turned around to look back at the house and the light was on in the attic, which was unoccupied. And I know nobody else had been up there. The kids didn't play in the attic. My wife had no reason to be up there. And I thought, well, that's really strange. Don't remember leaving it on. And I finished my walk about 20 minutes later and the light was off. But I walked into the house and everyone was still asleep. And that made me go, something strange is happening here. A couple days later, um, I'm just puttering around the house, probably a weekend or something. And all of a sudden, I smell like gasoline or some kind of petroleum through the house. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've got a gas leak, right? So I started like walking around the house, sniffing every corner, looking at the air vents to see if maybe the heater was pumping natural gas into the house or whatever. Could not find a source for it. But then I thought, well, this is really strange. And then it went away, just went away out of nowhere. So like 10 minutes, it's gone. And I started to feel a little presence in the house on occasion, especially when I came up to the attic. So I said, let's see. And I found you, I think, because you were doing the Inspire ghost hunting or something, I think, at the
mhm.
time. And so you came over, you brought George with you, and I brought you up to my attic. I don't know if you remember this. And I said, yeah, I've been feeling something around here. And I purposefully chose not to lead you to the spot where I was feeling it. But you instinctively turned around and went the other way and said, okay, it's over here. And when you did that without me giving any hint at all, I'm like, okay, Nikki's the real deal here, But there was some kind of presence in this house, and the house was only 2 years old at the time, and so I wasn't really sure what the deal was. But the light didn't come on by itself; it didn't get turned off by itself. That odd smell came out of nowhere, and it was there was absolutely no explanation for that. So I noticed, around that time that I'm sensitive to things like that,
Yeah.
and I especially feel I can pick up smells out of nowhere like that. Like I went on a ghost hunt at the state capitol building here in Raleigh one evening, and we were all sitting around a table in the old treasurer's office, and all of a sudden we can all smell cigar smoke out of nowhere. And of course, it's a state government building, so they don't allow any smoking anywhere.
Right.
And so we were all like, "Where is that coming from?" But it was just like it was right in the room with us. So,
Yeah.
mhm.
Going back to how we met.
uh-huh.
That was one of the many times I've had prophetic dream.
Oh,
So, because I think initially you contacted, I think you asked George to bring me or something, because
mhm.
I always let George be the one who knew what was going on, because I would prefer to do a cold walkthrough and not know
Right. You
much,
didn't want
because
to.
I
Right.
didn't want to be tainted,
Yeah.
for lack of a better word. Um, and I had a dream the night before about this other house and a man that lived there. And just as far as I knew, it was totally unrelated. But I think when we were there that day, you had said you thought it might be somebody who had passed away down the street. And George drove down to the area that you had described. And as we were driving through, I turned around and I said, George, that house was in my dream last night. And he goes, well, I think that was the house that Mark was talking about.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. There was a person who died in a tragic fire several days before. It was a kerosene heater that had blown up.
Mm.
And so when that happened, and then I smelled that petroleum smell in the house, I did sort of think, well, is this related somehow? But I had no contact with the deceased man or his wife, and I just moved into the neighborhood basically, so I could not figure out why something like that would be happening. But then again, after thinking about it later on, I thought, well, certain people, I think, are more sensitive than others to the presence of ghosts and spirits and things, and I think that maybe those departed souls are kind of drawn to you as a result, because nobody else really knows that they're around. So that's one explanation, I guess, but can't really explain it any other way.
Yeah.
But that's
And
I remember you mentioning your prophetic dream, so very
yeah.
cool.
And that's the same thing, I believe. Like those of us that are sensitive are kind of like beacons
Hmm.
to the ones on the other side who are looking for attention or just trying to figure out what on earth happened. Like that was pretty recent. He was probably still trying to figure out what he'd experienced,
Right.
because obviously that would be a surprising way to pass.
Yeah.
So I could see how he could be confused and just looking for anybody who might be able to pay him some attention and
Well, I hope we were
that
able
sort of thing.
I hope we were able to help him out. I wound up taking the ball and running with it there, and rallying the community to help get furniture and clothes and stuff for his widow, and help her get settled in a new house. And we collected a lot of stuff. So I was just hoping that that might put him at ease wherever he was. And I don't think that I had a lot of experiences after that. So I hope he's moved on successfully. And it was, yeah, but it was strange here for a while. I would be again, the only one awake in the mornings, and I would hear footsteps on my attic floor right above me, and knowing that there's nobody else up there. So
Yeah.
it can freak you out a little bit. But at the same time, um, I've not ever had any negative experiences with ghosts or anything that I've been around. I'm sure that that does happen, but to me, it's just people who don't realize that they've died. All of a sudden, people start ignoring them, and things don't quite seem right, and I think they just get confused. But I tend to want to help them more than anything. Like, hey,
Yeah.
let's get you oriented so you can move on.
Yeah. That's the best way to go about it. It's just compassion and respect and being as
Right.
helpful as we can with anybody, whether they're living or dead. That's what we should be doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay, before we get into CRV, one more question.
Hmm.
And this is going to sound random, but I feel like we've had a discussion about this. But have you ever seen a UFO?
I've seen several UFOs.
Okay.
Several UFOs. And again, I think this is one thing, when you start to notice one of them, you start to notice a lot of them. I think they kind of snowballs. But I there was one time, it was the day after Christmas, 2006. I was sitting in my living room reading a book about UFOs, actually, and sunny day, 3 p.m., very windy outside, nice fall or winter day, I guess. And I got up from my chair to go refill my bird feeder outside, and it was hanging on a hook on a tall window. So I had to get actually a rod out and lift it up over my head to kind of get the feeder down. So I'm standing out here, like I said, 3 p.m., working this bird feeder, and I kind of look past the rod, and I see this thing sort of floating in the sky, this ball shaped sort of thing. And I'm like, that's kind of interesting. It's not a plane, because it's not moving like one. It's not a turkey buzzard. I had lots of buzzards that would fly over my house at the time. It's like, okay, it's not that. I went through this whole list of things in my head about what it's not, and it's getting closer and closer. And suddenly, I'm out of guesses. Right? Okay, I've kind of like ruled out everything else. This has got to be a UFO, and it looked like a puffer fish or a flying squirrel or something. It had multiple points. And that was one of the things that differentiated it from a plane. It wasn't, for the plane, you've got two wings and you've got a tail and, a nose or whatever. And this thing had like too many points to be a plane, but it was like a puffer fish, big round thing, coal colored. and it was just kind of floating towards me, and then through the trees. And by the time I'd gotten through my list of things that I knew it wasn't, and then realized, oh, this has got to be some kind of UFO, it had gone over the trees, and I kind of lost sight of it. And I had just that afternoon, I'd been out taking pictures in my backyard, and my telephoto lens and my camera were like 20 feet away on the other side of the door. And I was like kicking myself afterwards, like, oh, if I could have only rushed in and grabbed that camera, I would have had some great pictures. But that was really strange. And later on, I just did some internet surfing, Google searching, and I found pictures of this very same weird UFO kind of thing that was seen in Belgium and in Mexico. And it was pretty much like a spiky, coal colored beach ball, or like I said, a pufferfish or something. So, and in fact, there was a Colombian airline captain who took some recent iPhone video of something flying over Medellin, Colombia, that looked exactly like what I saw. So they are out there, and they are here apparently too.
I think you're not the first person I've heard describe a UFO, a specific UFO, as looking like a puffer fish. So I might have recently heard that, the pilot story, because it seems like in the last 6 months or so, I've heard somebody, and I listen to so many podcasts. Like, I do podcasting because I love podcasting. So I'm like, who did I hear it on? Where did I hear it? Or did I just see it on like YouTube or something? I don't know.
I think in my case, one of the interesting things about that was it didn't look like a traditional UFO. It wasn't, a disc shaped, shiny kind of thing that you would look at and say, oh, well, that's it. It was completely different. And that's kind of what I thought made it more real for me. It wasn't somebody just playing a trick on me. It was just this weird thing that had no right to be flying the way it was. And I checked afterwards about the wind direction, and there was wind going in one direction and wind going in the other direction, because I think the front was moving through, and this thing was moving against the wind.
Wow. How big do you think it was?
Well, I think about that, and I've had other people, mention that they've seen things, and one difficulty you have with something you've never really seen before is that it's very difficult to judge what it looks like, right? Most people know like the rough dimensions of an airplane, right? The wing's going to be this particular length, and here's the tail. And no matter how big the airplane is, those dimensions kind of hold up. But with something that you're not expecting, you've never seen, especially something that might have a different kind of propulsion than we're used to. I mean, most people can judge when a plane might be flying too slowly to actually stay in the air, right? There's a stall speed for every aircraft. But for something like this, who knows? I mean, honestly, I couldn't tell you how big it is because I have no real way of judging. It'd be like, the old astronomy trick where you kind of hold your thumb up and you compare, like, how big is it compared to your thumb? If I had to say that, I would say maybe half the width of my thumbnail, but I don't know, like 30 feet, 300 feet. It's honestly, hard to tell. I don't think it was huge. I think it was probably about the size of a small plane, but can't say for sure.
Yeah. And it's really hard, even when you're a trained observer of things, to estimate altitude, and the altitude makes a difference in what the size really is. And when I was going through meteorology school, we were supposed to, or we did every week, go outside, look up, estimate how low the clouds were and all of that, and how much of the sky was covered. So we were being trained to be able to go out and make a visual report. And it took most of a semester to really get the level of the clouds, like the cloud base, down, so that we felt pretty confident about that. And most people don't have any sort of experience like that. So if it's above tree level or above the skyline, it could be pretty much any size, because there's just no way to put that in perspective.
Right. If there was something behind it, you might be able to gauge, like based on something that how big it is. And there are a few pictures of the UFOs that the U.S. government has gotten from satellites. And one of them trying to remember. This is somewhere in South America that they snapped a picture. It was either a satellite or an aerial photography mission in an aircraft, but they were taking pictures of the ground, and there's a silver disc that appears in one of these frames, plain as day. And the great value of that particular photograph is that they've got all kinds of reference points around it, right? They know how high that aircraft was. They know, what section of the land things were flying over. And so they can get a decent estimate of how big it was just based on that. They can kind of guess its dimensions. So, I didn't have any that kind of benefit when I was seeing my thing, and I certainly wasn't expecting to see anything flying over my house, so it's crazy.
Very rarely happens when you're prepared for it.
Yeah. But then, like a year or two later, there was that report of Chicago Airport, O'Hare Airport, around Christmas time, where this thing dropped out of the clouds, and everybody at the ramps saw it, all the baggage loaders, people in the terminal, and then it just disappeared again the same way. And it cut this cylindrical hole through the clouds as it shot up in the air, right? So I don't know. You're the meteorologist. You tell me if there's anything that can cause like a chimney pattern straight up in a cloud, right?
There is something called a cloud. I think it's cloud streak. I can't. They don't happen very often, but it looks like that. But there's not a UFO sighting by dozens of people associated with it. So that's what makes that one stand out a bit more.
Yeah, when I hear a pilot, a commercial pilot with hundreds or thousands of hours of flight time, saying that he or she saw something weird, that to me is, when you spend your whole life just staring out the window at things flying around, you tend to know when you're looking at something that doesn't belong there. So anytime a pilot has a report, I pay close attention to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I feel like we've covered the basis of
All right.
all the other fun stuff. Let's get into controlled remote viewing. First off, how long have you been doing it?
First found out about remote viewing 2005, 2006, that time frame. Well, actually, I found out about it from the old Art Bell radio shows back in the 90s, right? Where a lot of those programs were dealing with doom and gloom. There was a remote viewer that was in the military program named Ed Dames, who wound up sort of creating a cottage industry of predicting, this comet is going to come and, destroy the planet, and it's the kill shot, and everybody go buy your canned goods and, whatever else they were hawking there at the time. And Art Bell, bless his heart, he was giving this guy an audience, but there was a lot of stuff that just was kind of over the top. And so I didn't really pay much attention to remote viewing. And I was like, yeah, this is just like, the run on gold that Art Bell talks about every night, but then Art Bell had he had some other remote viewers from the program talking, guys like Paul Smith and Lynn Buchanan and Joe McMoneagle. And they sounded like serious, sober people, and were kind of setting him straight on Ed Dames. And then Art actually tried remote viewing himself. I remember him saying that he tried it and he could do it. And so I'm like, oh, what the heck, I'll have to check this out. And then because I live near the Rhine Research Center in Durham, North Carolina, the place that one of the first places to study psychic abilities scientifically, I heard that they had Joe McMoneagle coming to do a weekend workshop and teach people remote viewing. So I decided I had to go try this, and went there, and there was probably 30 of us sitting in this classroom, and Joe was just showing us doing things that would just blow our minds. Came out of that weekend quite a different person than I went in, and realized just how much more is possible with the human mind. Absolutely a watershed moment for me in my life. So do people know about remote viewing? Have you discussed this before? Do I need to give a little background?
I have not discussed this before, so you are welcome to give some
All
background.
right.
If you didn't, I would edit it into the intro of the show, but I'd rather you do it because you have more experience than I have. I will say that when Joe came into town that weekend, he did a Friday night talk at the Rhine, and I was there.
Okay.
But I had stuff I had to do the next morning, so I was not able to be in that workshop, and I regretted it ever since. But I have participated
Hmm.
on occasion with the group that you lead for
Hmm.
the Rhine that meets monthly,
Hmm.
correct?
Hmm.
Um, and I'll let you talk about that some more. But if you want to go ahead and give some background on it, that's
All
great.
right. Yeah. Quick explanation of remote viewing. Back in the early 70s, the CIA, and they still do this, to my knowledge, that they collect a lot of open source foreign intelligence, right? So whatever gets printed in other countries, they translate that and sort of keep that library safe, so they kind of get an idea about what kind of research is going on around the world. And there was one report that came out of the Soviet Union at the time that indicated the Soviets were spending millions and millions of dollars on psychic research. And one thing that we knew about the Soviets is they don't throw their money away. They wouldn't be investing this kind of money into something that didn't have any payoff, right? And this is not dollars, not rubles I'm talking about. This is dollars, millions and millions of dollars, right? So imagine what that was in rubles. Well, that got the intelligence community's attention, and so some of the army folks were sitting around going, what we need to do is figure out how vulnerable we are. Like, what are they able to get, right? And this is something that intelligence agencies do a lot. It's like a red team, blue team thing in info security, right? You want to try this yourself to see what kind of information might be leaking, right? So they decided they would come up with this remote viewing group and learn how to do this remote viewing that apparently the Russians, the Soviets had gotten ahead of. And so they started to fund this and put together this little organization, tiny little unit. And their budget was like $1 million a year, which, you could spend that much on an F-18's flight or something, right? It's peanuts basically from the
Yeah.
military's budget. But they came up with this process where a person can sit in a room, and usually there's not a lot of distractions around you, so they try to keep it muted and quiet or whatever. And you have a stack of paper in front of you and a pen, and they can give you coordinates and say, I want you to describe the target that's at XYZ 123. And the person can learn to pull psychic um, impressions out of their mind and focus in on what those target credentials or coordinates represent. And the more often you do this, the more data that can come through. And they were very successful. They weren't 100% successful, but very successful. And in fact, President Carter actually confirmed some of this work in a speech that he gave once he left office. And there was an incident in the late 70s when Carter was still in office where a Soviet bomber had crashed somewhere in Africa. And the Soviets didn't know where it was, and we didn't know where it was. And it was a race to kind of collect this crash material. And this was something that the remote viewers were tasked with. And one of the remote viewers came up with a location that was within like 3 miles of where this actual crash had taken place. And that impressed President Carter, and he became a believer in psychic ability. So anybody can learn to do this. It is all that has been declassified. It was declassified in 1995, I believe. And there's lots of material out there, and I've learned how to do it. And Joe McMonagle, like I said, came to do this workshop and showed you a little bit about it. And you don't really need a ton of training to do it, but it's basically, remote viewing is basically just a framework for applying psychic ability.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got a well-honed intuition already, remote viewing sort of lets you focus it in a way that makes it more useful and practical, I think. So it's an amazing skill. And the first time you sit down and you draw something or you get impressions for something, and you absolutely know that you were there and you have no other outside way of knowing it, it blows your mind. And like I said, it's a watershed moment that'll change your world forever.
Yeah.
It is such a rush.
So, what are some of just the basic rules, I guess, or guidelines for trying controlled remote viewing?
Right. Well, there's controlled remote viewing. There's a couple of different methods of doing it. Joe McMoneagle always used what he calls ERV, extended remote viewing, which is basically where he calms his mind. He lies down. It's almost to the point of sleeping, that sort of hypnagogic state, and generally has somebody in the room with him to sort of translate his snoring and mumbles and everything. But that's the way he works, and he'll get all these really amazing impressions. He's one of the world's best remote viewers. There is what's called CRV, controlled remote viewing, which is a little bit more structured, and it's a way of sort of giving your left brain something to do while your right brain is collecting all these impressions. So it's you looking at certain aspects of a target and sort of focusing on like the colors or the smells or the dimensions of something. And then when you're sort of looking at these exclusive criteria, anything else that pops into your head is considered, imagination. It's kind of an easier way of filtering out imagination, because a lot of times it's challenging to pick out, what might be real information in your head versus, what you're imagining. So even the best remote viewers sometimes can get led astray with imagination. So it really just takes practice, but you don't really need a lot of effort or training, I guess, to do it. The main thing is you need to be blind. You need to be blind to the target. So if you're doing training, then somebody who's offering you the target can know what the target is and maybe help you pull out those impressions as you go. But generally, the definition is everybody in the room with you is completely blind to the target. Mm-hmm. And if you gather information that way, you can consider it remote viewing.
Right. Because if somebody in the room was not blind to the target and you're gathering information, it's possibly telepathy and not actually getting impressions directly.
Yes, it could be telepathy. It could be, facial expressions. And people or organizations like the Ryan have a history of being very strict in lab protocols as a result, right? Because nobody wants to be accused of, leading somebody into a particular answer or not. So I believe that Joe McMoneagle's definition that everybody must be blind is absolutely something that is necessary to guarantee that what you're getting is not somebody's imagination, but it's that's really the only real rule. I mean, Joe likes to say if you close your eyes and stand on one foot and speak in tongues or whatever, and you get good information, that's remote viewing.
Yeah.
So, but there's a lot of proponents of CRV, the controlled remote viewing. You say, well, no, you got to go to the gurus and you got to spend a week doing this and thousands of dollars and I think the truth is somewhere in between. Some of the best remote viewers I know, like Das Smith, who's, on a lot of YouTube channels, he's self-trained. He got all of his material and stuff off the internet and went to some of the web forums and trained himself. So anybody can do this, really. Let me tell you, that weekend I spent with Joe McMoneagle, like I said, was really crazy. For the next 2 weeks, I was like incredibly psychic, and really interesting things happened. Like, for instance, that later that week, I was sitting around noodling around with a computer I was trying to fix in the office. One of my colleagues came in and he started a conversation with me. And as I'm sitting here just kind of zoning out with this computer, I start to realize that I know every single word that he's about to say. And I also know every single word I'm going to say in response. It was like suddenly the whole script was in my head and I was somehow a little bit out of time. I could hear everything. And that was really, and that went on for like 5 minutes.
Wow.
5 minutes of conversation. And I was just smiling here. He had no idea why I was laughing, but how could I explain this to him? Oh yeah, I can totally read your mind right now. And I think it's, once again, the more you exercise those psychic abilities and stuff, the easier it gets and the more accepting you get of it. And so that was interesting. And I think just because I'd practiced remote viewing, that kind of brought that skill out.
Yeah, that's amazing. And next question is, and you might have just answered it, but like, what has been the craziest experience you've had since you started remote viewing? And that
Well,
one
that was
sounded pretty crazy.
that was pretty crazy. I will give you a good practical example of what happened. Maybe 10 years later, 2015 or so, I was working uh, on Centennial campus here in town, and went to lunch one day, came back and decided I would stop by the credit union on the way back to work to get out some money. So I went to the drive-through ATM, and I pull into the parking lot of the credit union, and all of a sudden the weirdest feeling came over me, and I caught myself thinking, okay, if I were to come in here, that would be my escape route. I would drive out through there, and I would take my getaway car through here. And I'm going, where is this coming from? Right. I'm like one car behind the guy at the ATM. It's a beautiful sunny day. I don't feel threatened. There's nobody else around but the car in front of me. And all of a sudden I'm feeling really, really nervous. Like something weird is going to happen here. And so I got my money out. Right. And I went back to my desk, and I'm flipping through the news, and I found out that maybe 5-10 minutes after I had been at the credit union, it got robbed.
Oh, wow.
And two assailants came through and like assaulted the teller, and it was violent, right? And something in my head uh foresaw that somehow, right?
Yeah.
I suddenly felt really nervous, like there was something about to go down, and sure enough, it did. And I saved that ATM receipt too, because that was kind of an interesting thing to happen. So every now and then your intuition will bail you out of sticky situations. So I definitely pay attention to things like that whenever something happens.
Yeah. Wow. That is a wild story.
Mhm.
And yeah.
So we are so far more powerful than we give ourselves credit for, and I think it's all just a God-given gift, right? I mean, uh, anybody can develop these skills,
Mhm.
and that's been shown in the lab. Pretty much anybody that walks in and given a test on remote viewing has done very well. But it's just some people are more accepting of it, and I think that if you're willing to play at it and work at it, then you can hone that really well. I think I have a natural, very good BS detector as a result, right? I can sort of get a feel
Yep.
for when somebody is trying to pull one over on me, which is handy too. Maybe it's part of me kind of being an empath too,
Yeah.
but that comes in handy too. I think I can get a good idea about people who aren't entirely honest. So
Absolutely.
lots of practical uses for this ability.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that anybody can learn it. It's really anybody can learn how to tap into their intuition in multiple ways, but this is something where you learn a very structured way to do it, and all you have to do is get out of your own way. Like
Really,
just
that's all it is.
yeah, you just accept that it's possible and you keep trying. And you may not get it exactly the first time. I think the first time I ever did it, I got like it was a picture. I got a color in the foreground, right? And everything else was just kind of, not really. And I was like, well, at least I got something right. I wasn't completely off. And that gives you a little bit of confidence. You just keep trying. And
Mhm.
I haven't done it enough. Like I know I could get good at it if I had time, but like so many other things in my life, it's not one of the top priorities for how to spend my time.
Right.
Podcasting, energy healing, writing, those are the priorities right now. And CRB is kind of lower, something fun to dabble with when I have extra time.
It does
um
take some time.
yeah, but speaking of time,
Mhm.
tell everybody about the group that you lead for the Rhine.
Yeah, so I've been a long time volunteer at the Rhine. I'm actually on the board of directors now, but for the past 2-3 years, I have been leading the Rhine Remote Viewing Group, which meets the third Wednesday of every month, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And we initially started, meeting in person for several years, but once the pandemic hit, we shifted to being all online, and now we have members that join us from all over the world, London and South America, and plenty on the West Coast. But we spend about 2 hours talking about remote viewing. We usually work one or two practice targets, and I pick out the practice targets, and often the results are really good. Like for instance, Cumbre Vieja volcano in Canary Islands erupted last year, and just for fun, I had tasked the group with that several weeks before the eruption happened, and I got data back from everybody that showed me that yeah, it's going to explode, and I didn't know what to do. I was like, that's a little freaky, but
Yeah.
sure enough, several weeks later, boom, it went up, and just everyday remote viewers who were just figuring this out on their own got that information. It was kind of cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So if somebody wanted to become part of that group, how would they do that?
Well, it's really a member benefit. So we ask that you it's free for members, but if you want to join with a temporary membership, it's $10 a month, and that gets you access to all the resources at the Rhine. So the other groups that they have, all the really cool videos that the Rhine has in its video vault of talks and workshops and things like that. So it's a pretty good deal, I think. But if you go to rhine.org and search for remote viewing there, you'll find a link to the meetings. And yeah, I encourage everybody to come. You don't have to have any experience. You can do just simple remote viewing exercises and learn a little bit more about it.
And you get to meet some interesting people virtually as well.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I have done it and it is fun.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about tonight?
Well, if you are interested in remote viewing, one of the things that I found really amazing is that probably the biggest forum for remote viewing right now is Reddit. If you go to the remote viewing subreddit, there are over 50,000 people on that subreddit now, and they discuss remote viewing. They have a Discord server now too. So every afternoon, there's a voice chat with a bunch of remote viewers, and several of the really better remote viewers hang out there. So if you've got questions that you want to ask them, you can pretty much type them right in and get an instant response. So if you go to Reddit and look for the remote viewing subreddit, I would suggest you check that out and maybe see me there too. So.
That's cool. I had no idea about that. I love this. Technology can drive me crazy sometimes, but there are some good benefits to the time that we're living in right now, and that's obviously one of them.
Being able to connect to people that you'd otherwise not be able to find is pretty cool. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time out of your evening to talk to me and introduce our listeners to the idea of remote viewing and share your stories. It's been really great talking to you tonight.
Well, I've enjoyed it too, Nikki. Thanks for having me on. And I'll be happy to come back anytime.
Awesome. Thanks again to Mark for sharing his experiences and giving us some insight to remote viewing. No pun intended. I've put a link to the Rhine Research Center's remote viewing group's information in the show notes. If you're interested in sharing your own paranormal experiences, please use the contact form at peeppodcast.com to get in touch. That's PEEP podcast.com. Remember, that stands for People Experiencing Everyday Paranormal. You can be as anonymous as you like. You can keep up with the show on its Facebook page, facebook.com/peeppodcast. If you enjoy the podcast, please give it some rating love on your favorite podcast app. Share it with friends and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Doing so will help the podcast be found by others. A huge thank you to everyone who has given the show some love. I truly appreciate it. No matter how you support the show, listening, telling others about it, or any other way, I absolutely appreciate your being here. Thanks again for listening. Stay safe and be well.